Are you the fanatic we're looking for? Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. The Draft Professor is the only interactive and dynamic mock draft simulator. Dynamic means that the picks from one mock draft will influence the players that team selects in the next mock draft. This can be done with a first-round challenge. This can be done with a second-round challenge. This will be done with any mock draft from the Draft Professor. In addition, the Draft Professor has rank players functionality, allowing you to rank players and build your own big board and then compare your board to that of other users at the Draft Professor. In addition, the Draft Professor has draft a team functionality. This allows 2 or more users to snake draft a team of 22 players from the rookie pool, and then you can debate which players you like at which position and why. Thank you for tuning in to this podcast. This episode will begin shortly. Well, welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. We have a live Saturday morning episode, so get your coffee. Brian and I are going to talk some offensive linemen. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Brian, how are you?
Doing all right. Got home from work just a little bit ago, so ready to get this going.
Absolutely. So appreciate your patience getting this started. I know I'm running a little bit late, but So Brian and I are going to go over some offensive linemen this morning. The first one is Justin Mayers from Colorado. So Brian, what can you tell us about Justin Mayers?
Yeah, so Mayers was originally a UTEP guy. He transferred over to Colorado this last year. And so he has he's had experience at both left guard and right guard, but he's played most of his career at left guard. And he actually, it's interesting statistic is he's only given up 2 sacks in his career. So that's at least per PFF. So that's just something interesting. So he's in 2020 this year. He was a little bit in and out of the lineup this year. I think there's some sort of injury or something. I'm not sure. I was trying to look into it. I couldn't find anything. But so anyway, he is a little bit older guy. He's 24. He's listed at 320. But he looks like he might be a little bit heavier than that, maybe 330. So he looks a little overweight. So he looks a little top heavy. But he does have quick hands and feet. And then his arm length looks average, so maybe slightly below, but it looks like it should be fine. It shouldn't be an issue. But he can get caught up in trash sometimes, I noticed. He's not a big mover in the run game. He's more of a positional blocker when, in the run game. But he does give a good effort. He keeps his legs churning. He might be able to play some center, I think, even actually, if he just, training camp and they give some snaps or see how he can do it. But he's shown he can readjust his hands. He'll use them independently. And he does a good job of getting them, keeping them inside. And he shows really good awareness and football intelligence in helping his teammates. But he doesn't overhelp or end up losing vision on what he's supposed to be doing and doing his job. Because sometimes you see players do that. And then, but he's 6'3", so he already has naturally good leverage, but he gets good leverage regard anyway on the field. And then so defenders rarely get under his pads. And then he rarely gives any ground in the passing game, like any sort of power rushes or anything like that. And then, like I said, feet are well coordinated and they're able to move well in pass pro. And he can keep up with speed rushers, but he will get a lot high out of his stance on occasion. It's not something that overly worries him, but like I said, he has pretty good natural leverage, so it's not too much of an issue right now in college. But it's something he's going to need to look at working on as far as the NFL.
Okay, and what round grade do you have on Justin Mayers?
I have a day 3 grade. I believe it's 4th or 5th round. I think he's in that range.
Okay, Spencer Holstege from UCLA.
Yeah, all right. So a little background information on him is he's actually also 24. He'll be 25 during his rookie. He'll turn 25 his rookie year, sorry. Another transfer guy. He started at Purdue and then transferred to UCLA these last 2 years. He's only played, interesting enough, only played any left guard. He's played right guard, center, tackle, nothing. He's only played left guard. And but a good thing he's been a 5-year starter, so he has lots of experience. Official measurements we have on him is 6'4" and 3/8", 314, so he's got decent size. He looks he looks good and filled out on his frame with very low body fat. He gets good hand placements in the pass pro, and he keeps them, up his hands up high and tight. He has a good stance, balanced. He does lack some athleticism to play outside. To me, he's kind of a phone booth player, and his length is kind of average, maybe a little bit below average. But he gives good effort as a run blocker and has good accurate strikes when he's attacking in the pass game. He does lack some lower body and core strength to get much of a push in the run game, so that's something he may need to work on. But he's an older player, so I don't know if that's it. Just he's tapped out. He's at where he is. And then he holds up okay to power rushers, but he'll give some ground and continues to fight with them. He's calm in his movements and how he plays. He's because all this experience, I think, is just he just knows what he's doing. And his experience shows, like I said. And then his aiming points on the second level need work because a lot of times he'll whiff on those blocks, he'll miss. Sometimes I think it might be just due to his average, just slightly below average athleticism. But it's still something he needs to work on. And he's always looking to help his teammates. His shoulders are a bit narrow, so that causes it can be an issue sometimes in the NFL. Some teams may look at it as an issue because they have narrow shoulders. And then, but once he gets going, he has trouble stopping, so his change of direction is not good. But he shows decent grip strength, and I have an undrafted grade on him.
Okay. Joe Huber from Wisconsin.
All right. So another every year Wisconsin guy. We got a Wisconsin guy every year comes out. It seems like, or multiple. So a little information on him. So he has experience at left guard, right guard, and right tackle, and he's also a former walk-on. So that's kind of interesting. So you always see those walk-on guys do well. So he's got a well-developed physique. He plays hard and will play. I've noticed at times he'll play with injuries. There was noticed specifically in a game versus Iowa, he had some sort of injury to his hand, and he kept going in and out of the game. And I see because he come back with his hand wrapped up and stuff like that. But he was playing through the injury, so that's O-line coaches will love that. Teams will love that. He actually started out at Cincinnati. Forgot to mention that as a background thing, but 6'5", 311, aggressive run blocker, and he wants to humiliate. I've noticed on field he wants to humiliate his defender. He wants to put them on the ground, get on top of him, throw him down, all that type of stuff. He's got good length for an interior offensive lineman. For a tackle, I think it'd be average, maybe slightly below average, but for an interior guy, he's got good length. Good agility, but he still needs more consistency in his pass reps. In his technique sometimes is a little off. And then, but his athleticism is slightly above average, I would say. There was a few times on pass pro, I think I noticed where he was shuffling backwards instead of sideways. And pass pro, I don't know what he was doing. I was like, what is he doing? It was kind of weird. I'm not sure if he was coached to do that. I don't think he was because it was only a few times, but it was weird. But anyway, so and then with that, and then there were times, interesting enough, also I saw his base was too wide. I don't see that too often, but his base was too wide, which causes an issue where he can't really move because he ends up being kind of stiff. And then he'll get over his skis sometimes when fighting a pass pro. But he does show flashes of being able to reset his hands. But he doesn't. Sometimes he doesn't recover quick enough, so he still needs to work on that. And then he gets and maintains good leverage, even though he's a pretty tall guy. And then, but he does do that sometimes, sacrificing his balance. So he does a little too much sometimes, and allows defenders to notice he got beat a lot of times by push-pull techniques. And then his explosiveness I saw was kind of average. He'll open up his hips to the outside too soon, and defenders will take advantage of it. He also has lots of experience being used as a puller, and he does a good job of actually hitting his landmarks. And but he will bend at the waist when pulling and engaging with the defender, so this will cause him sometimes to give up ground or to power rushers. But he looks for work. He has good spatial awareness, but it could be better. And then keeping keeping between himself and the quarterback. And then when the quarterback's in the pocket, he can do better at that, being just knowing where the quarterback is on the play. And then I even noticed he has I forgot what his name was, but he likes to punish jumpers. I forgot what his name is. The O-line guy on Twitter always talks about punishing jumpers. I noticed he does like to do that too. But he can pick up stunts and pass them off. But but I've noticed at times he worries too much about helping his left tackle when he's at left guard. He's focused too much on helping his left tackle, and then there was a number of times I saw where his center got beat because he was too focused on helping his left tackle. So that's something he's going to need to work on, just being more aware. And then, but it's unlikely he'll be able to play outside in the NFL, even though he has tackle experience. So he'll probably be just an interior guy. And then I think because of athleticism, he lacks the athleticism to play tackle in the NFL. And I have a late day 3 pick on him, so like 6th, 7th round.
Okay. Next player, center Zeke Corrall from NC State.
Right. So another transfer guy. He started out at Notre Dame, and then we have listed here 6'3", 300. He has guard experience, so he's had 6 starts at guard in 2021, but he's also a 3-year starter. But he's been mostly a center through his career. 24 years old, 6-year guy. He has a short and stocky build. You can kind of see by the 6'3", 300 there. Sometimes he'll rise up in his stance a little bit during the rep, not like right off the snap, but during the rep he'll kind of rise up, and he'll get beat sometimes with that. So it's something he needs to work on, trying to keep his balance down, his anchor down. But he needs to watch that, like I said. So, but he has a good, solid, accurate snap. His velocity though is kind of middling, I would say. The velocity on his snap is kind of eh. So I think that's something he's going to need to work on, be able to get it back there faster. And then, but he does have good base and pass pro, but he'll get himself turned around and pushed around by D-line. And he needs to do a better job of staying square to line of scrimmage. But he is an aggressive blocker, but he will, again, get too aggressive sometimes, and he'll duck his head. And he gets up on the ground more than you want to see for an offensive lineman. He's on the ground a little too much. That's more of a balance thing, ducking his head and stuff like that. But he'll open up his hits sometimes too soon. But he does show good, solid grip strength, and he keeps his hands inside. Gives maximum effort and will occasionally play through the whistle. But he does lack explosiveness and has trouble keeping up with explosive defenders. So explosive defenders will blow by him sometimes. But if a defender does get to his outside shoulder, it's hard for him to recover. But he does show strength to put defenders on the ground. His arms are short, though. So he probably is a center only in the NFL. But he's occasionally shown flashes of being able to do one-arm punches. And then you would like to see him do it more because of his lack of length. You want to see those guys use one-arm punch more often, because when you're doing one-arm punch, you actually technically have more length than when you're doing both arms. So you want those guys with the shorter arms to do that more often. And then also, but he's not particularly athletic, but he's pretty efficient mover. I would say he's pretty coordinated. Not particularly athletic. But he can readjust on the move, so he has pretty quick feet where he can change direction and move on the move. But he anchors down against power pretty well, and then he can be better moving his feet when he has a defender trying to get on the edge on him on shoulder. Sometimes he kind of stops his feet and kind of lunges instead of moving his feet. And then also, but he can handle himself pretty well against zero techs and one tech defensive linemen. His awareness and IDing blitzers does need to be better, because he missed a number of times. There were blitzers that just blew past him because he wasn't paying attention. He didn't ID them. He didn't call it out to the the adjustment or whatever, or take the blitzer. But he does need to keep his anchor down when he's retreating in pass pro. His anchor will kind of raise up, so he needs to keep that down, and then his shoulders back, of course, too. But I've noticed he doesn't get unbalanced sometimes. But he does. I feel he does still have some room for growth, and he could be a solid backup center in sort of probably preferably gap scheme. But I have a 5th or 6th round grade on him.
Okay, Walker Parks from Clemson.
Yeah. So like I mentioned to you before we started recording, Walker Parks was kind of he's an interesting watch. There was I think 3 straight plays. I don't know what he was doing. He was getting knocked around. He was flying in the air. Defender had him basically flying in the air. I was like, what is going on? So he has background stuff. He has right guard, right tackle experience. 3-year starter. Technically a 3-year starter. He would have been a 4, but 2023 he got injured and he missed basically all of 2023. So that's a year he missed. But he's 23 years old, listed at 6'5", 305. He looks a little bit smaller than that, but he's probably around there, 6'4", 300 maybe, something like that. But he did have actually take 100 snaps at left tackle in 2020. So he has a little bit of tough tackle experience, not much, but a little bit. So I've noticed the weird thing is his explosiveness out of his stance can be a little hit or miss. So I noticed, again, like I said, kind of mentioned the weird weird play, in the game. There was some snaps where he would be like the first guy off the snap. The ball would be snapped, he'd be the first guy out of his stance. And there's a time where he was like the very last guy. Like everybody else was moving, everybody else was getting in their stance and whatever, and he was still like in his stance. I'm like, what is he doing? So I'm not sure exactly what it is, if he's not paying attention, or I don't know. I'm assuming it's a mental thing where he's not paying attention, or he's not aware of the snap count, maybe. But anyway, with that, or beyond that, I should say, he does look to have good straight line speed when he's moving, he's running in space. And his arm length is okay, but will likely limit him to playing on the interior. He has some balance issues and gets knocked off balance pretty easily. He does play hard, but his ability to sustain blocks is lacking and needs to be better. Has trouble latching on, narrow shoulders and hips. His body looks to be kind of maxed out, like he's probably not going to get much bigger. But he can use his independent hands. He hasn't consistently held up a power by himself. But he has some flashes of it occasionally. When he's double teaming, he does okay, of course. But when he's handling one-on-one power, he really has struggled with that. But then he's surprisingly nimble, though, for his size and his build and all that stuff. But he can get to second level pretty well and block linebackers. He can mirror and move his feet in pass pro. He will occasionally lean and get his head over the feet and lose balance when he's on the move, and he'll get thrown on the ground by I've noticed he'll get thrown on the ground by the defensive lineman when he does that. But he has the athleticism to recover and pick up blitzing linebackers. He grabs a lot of times he'll grab the defender's outside shoulders, and he can get, so that's something he's going to need to work on, because that's going to get potentially called for holding in the NFL. And then he seems to have an occasional, what I would just, lack of a better term, brain farts, where it doesn't seem like he knows what he's doing or is confused. Seems like he's confused. Like I said, with the the snap stuff, he just seems like he's not sure what's going on. There was a play specifically, actually I put this in my notes, where there was both guards are pulling and they basically ran into each other. So there was some sort of miscommunication, or I don't know. But that was a play I was just like, whoa, that's bad. And you're playing at that high of a level and you're running into your other guard. But anyway, but he does sometimes focus too much on helping his teammates, ends up hurting the offense. He sets a good base though in pass pro. He's not the quickest at resetting his hands. His ability to ID blitzers can be hot and cold. So sometimes he does it, sometimes he doesn't. His play is inconsistent, but he does show some physical flaws that he might not be able to overcome. But I have him as a late day 3 pick that could make it as like a 9th, 10th offensive lineman that can play guard or tackle on emergency, if he just really hammers out those flaws and just works on his balance and all that type of stuff.
Cool. Bryce Foster from Kansas.
Oh yeah, Bryce Foster. He was a fun guy to watch. He's interesting. So again, another transfer. I think everybody's been a transfer here so far. He started at Texas A&M and then he transferred to, as everybody can see here, Kansas. He's a 3-year starter. All his snaps have been at center, so he's always been a center. He did have a season-ending injury in 2022, but as you can see, as his listed highs here, he's pretty big for a center, 6'4", 330. But his arms are kind of short. But like I said, he's a large center, and he wears it well. He doesn't look like he's way overweight or super fat or anything like that. And I've noticed he has really large, thick calves, which help with your explosiveness. And then his shotgun snaps look really good and accurate, pretty good velocity on them. And then his strikes can be a little bit wonky at times. He gets a little over his skis off the snap, and then he needs to straighten out his back a little bit more. But his athleticism looks pretty average, but it's good for his size, for 6'4", being 6'4", 330 center. But he goes from snap to blocking pretty quickly, so he snaps it back and he's in position pretty quickly. He's showing he can block a little bit on the second level. Sometimes, occasionally, he'll get some linebackers and whatnot. But he can hold up against power, of course, because of that big body of his. He gets good leverage. His upper body is a little stiff when he's moving. And he can losing a little weight might help this. I put that as a question mark, so maybe it's one of those things I could see him potentially try to lose some weight before his pro day. He'll sometimes lean on his defender when he's blocking them, which they could use it to their advantage. Again, they could use a push-pull if he's like leaning on them too much. And he doesn't get movement in the run game much, but we'll flash it once or twice. Occasionally, he'll get some movement. And I notice sometimes, like, he's almost invisible sometimes on film, which, you know, it's the same kind of. And then in the NFL, they say, well, you know, they're like on the broadcast, they'll say, oh, if you're not noticed, nobody notices you, you're doing good. You know, for offensive lineman, right? Or if they don't call your name out on the broadcast, oh, he's doing a good job. But I feel like with college offensive linemen, it's kind of the opposite. If like you're not noticing that guy, then that kind of might be an issue because they're playing against lesser competition. You know what I mean? So they should at least kind of stand out. So, you know, I noticed despite his size, though, he doesn't make much shock or power in his punch. But he has the size and length to learn to. I think he has the size and length to learn to play guard in the NFL. But he can get to second level defenders as long as they are not moving much. If they're moving around, he kind of has some trouble. But if they're kind of more or less static, he can get to them. So I think he might be better off dropping some weight and gaining some athleticism, just because, like I said, he doesn't have a lot of power in him anyway. So it might make more sense for him to lose some weight, get a little athleticism, get a little bit quicker feet, stuff like that. And then learning to play guard would be good too. You know, probably get down to about 315 maybe ish, 315 ish, 310. But I think he's a day 3 pick that has still some upside, and it should be taken mid to late day 3, so like 5th round, maybe 6th. And he should learn to get some positional versatility, learn some guard. I think that would definitely help him a lot too.
Okay, so before we move on to the final player, Brian, you want to kind of introduce yourself to everybody watching? And it's actually been a pretty good morning. We actually have a decent number of people watching. So tell everybody kind of who you are, how they can find you. We're not usually live on Saturday mornings. So
yeah, so of course you can see down here down there on X right there, BMAFI NFL. And I'm also on Blue Sky, just Brian Mafia, I think, or however they do in a Blue Sky. I can't remember. I'm not on there as much, but I try and go on there at least a few times a day, just check in and trying to use it more as more often, but it's hard, time. But of course, then I also write for Gridiron Heroics. I do like college football writing and NFL draft writing. I haven't written anything in like maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks so far, just because I've been busy watching film stuff. But soon I'm going to be writing my final positional rankings. So like my top 10 quarterbacks, top 10 running backs, top 10 tight ends, wide receivers, all that type of stuff. So that'll be coming out soon. And then I also usually write for the She Said TV draft guide, which is, one made by Packers Fan. It's one of the most well-known Packers fans website that, they get hundreds of thousands of views a day views on their website a day, and they have a YouTube channel and all that type of stuff. So She Said TV. So I usually write an article for their draft guide, and then I usually do a positional breakdown. Last year I did defensive tackles, and before that I did kickers. And I also usually do the article I usually do is like identify guys that the Packers would not draft due to them not being able to fit past certain Packers thresholds. So, and then usually I get those all right. So there's that, and then of course I'm on here. So that's about it.
Cool. Well, and you need to remind everybody that you have a database. So tell everybody kind of about the database that you maintain, because a lot of people at the Draft Professor rely on Brian's database. So you definitely need to plug that.
Yeah. So long story short, there was a guy on Twitter. He's not on Twitter anymore. He kind of quit Twitter and draft and all that stuff. He actually started the database. And then he brought me on to help him. And then when he left, he basically gave it to me. So I took it over. So it's basically, I just track, how do I put it? Draftable prospects, players who I think are draftable. So I have seniors in there. I have juniors in there, sophomores, freshmen, all that type of stuff. And then, I have positional rankings. They're kind of loose rankings, but I kind of keep them kind of loose. They're not specific. Like this guy's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. They're kind of just general. And I do my best to track official measurements. So I have a source who gives me Bledsoe measurements. Usually in the spring, he'll get them to me. So I'll get Bledsoe measurements and I'll put those in there. So any measurement in my database that you see is it's in that kind of draft combine format. That means it's official. And then otherwise it's from the school's website. And then else? I have 40 times in there. Those are kind of assumed 40 times or yeah. I mean, once the combine comes, I will put official 40 times in there. But right now, they're all assumed 40 times. And then I have notes in there on each player. And then I also have different tabs for each conference and each school. So there's players separated by school and stuff like that.
Awesome. So, like I said, there's a number of podcasters at the Draft Professor, including myself, that use Brian's database as one of our points of reference of which players do we cover on a podcast, or maybe what's some of the pedigree of the player, because Brian does a good job of keeping track of when they change schools. So definitely want to shout out Brian's database. If you have questions on that, definitely reach out to Brian. So you can see it at BMafi NFL on X or Twitter.
I do my best I do my best to keep track of those transfers. It's hard because there's so many. This year there was like 2,000 plus guys in the transfer portal, so it's hard to keep track of. I do my best.
Right, and if you're already keeping track of 2,000 players, you're about 700 more than me. Right, like I'm trying to make sure the top 300 or 350 make it into the draft simulator. It's just different sites or different lists for different reasons. So, as far as me, you can follow me at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. This channel is content every day. So Monday through Friday, there's 2 podcasts a day. Next week is the first annual quarterbacks week. So every podcast next week deals with quarterbacks, Monday through Friday. Okay. And then if you go back on the channel, this is one of the last scouting report episodes that we're doing. So Brian, if you want to see more content on different offensive linemen, just go to the YouTube channel. It's at NFL Draft Fanatic on YouTube. Find the offensive line, and you will see scouting reports on offensive linemen. And those scouting reports are given by about 5 different people, including Brian. So you'll get, like, for example, with Ersery, you can actually hear multiple people's opinions on Aireontae Ersery because multiple people have done scouting reports on it. So, and that goes without saying for every position. Like wide receiver, you can get about 5 different people's opinions. And just depending on the position, not everybody has done a scouting report on every player, right, but every player has been covered at least once. So
there you go.
With that being said, Brian, the star for the day is Aireontae Ersery, the tackle from Minnesota, who's going to be at the Senior Bowl. So what do you want to tell everybody? What was that?
Yeah, no, it's the star of the group. The only guy in this group that we talked about that has not transferred. So he's biggest guy in this group. He's the only really tackle in this group. 6'6", 325. I actually have official arm measurements on him as 34 and an eighth. And he'll be 23 in February, so a little bit older. We're not that bad. Almost all of his playing experience is at left tackle. He's had a little bit of right tackle, but not much. And then there's a couple times they put him in in some special packages where he was lined up kind of like a guard. It was like a special, unbalanced line type of thing. But anyway, so left tackle. He technically could have came back for a 6th year, but he's not going to, obviously, because he's going to Senior Bowl. Another interesting background thing I found out about him was he actually didn't play football until his junior year of high school. So he's played football for 6 years, 7 years, something like that. So he hasn't played a lot. And it kind of shows in his play, actually. I'll just mention that too. So, but he does show the ability to adjust on the move. He's got a strong upper body, but he just still has a number of technical flaws to work out. His base can get too narrow at times in pass pro, and which obviously can throw off his balance. Sometimes his shoulders can get too far forward, with his pad level and stuff. His strike accuracy can be too high, and sometimes he'll bend at the waist. And then so his hands will get too wide in pass pro as well. But despite these technical flaws, he handles power pretty well. I think it's just he's just so big and so naturally strong. He handles it really well. But obviously NFL, that's going to have to get a lot better. His strikes are very quick. He doesn't play through the whistle. He plays, I would say, to the whistle, but that's fine. It's not as important these days in the NFL. And then he moves pretty well in pass pro for his size, for how big he is. He can reset his hands and recover well, even though he's losing the rep. He doesn't give up when battling with defenders in pass pro. He plays his play shows patience when he is pass blocking though, so which is kind of surprising. A lot of times those guys that aren't super experienced, sometimes they're a little frantic, but he shows good patience. And then his speed is okay for his size. But his because of his size and his wingspan, it makes it hard for defenders to get around him. And then but he does bendy, speedy edge rushers do give him some problems. So he's having trouble keeping up with those guys sometimes. Some of his technical issues, and I think some of his athleticism issues, a little bit of combination of both. He can be a physical run blocker when he gets his mitts locked onto players. His grip strength and pass pro is really good as well. And then he can block on the second level, but he wasn't asked to do it much at Minnesota. He's pretty much asked to stay where he was. He's shown flashes of agility as a pass blocker. And I noticed a few times on his films when he's out there blocking and when he's got a defensive back and his sights defensive back usually makes as they say, a business decision and kind of avoids him. But he's also flashed knockback power. He'll use a one-hand punch. You would like to see him use it more just because he's so long. He could really keep defenders at bay with that. And then, but he does keep his hands high and tight and pass pro. He handles stunts well and doesn't get tricked with those. But I think because of his size and athleticism, I think he's going to be a right tackle in the NFL. A right tackle that could probably fill in a left tackle in emergency injuries type of situation, but he's going to primarily be a right tackle. But I still have a day 2 pick with a lot of upside. Probably a second round pick. He'll probably go in the second round. Sorry. But I could see him maybe slip into the third round if maybe he doesn't have a great workout or something like that. But I have him as a second round pick right now.
Okay. So if a team needs a tackle, what does your tackle board look like right now, Brian? Like, who are maybe the top 3 to 5 who would be a tackle?
Well, as you know, this year's kind of a bit of a mess just because there's so many guys who are probably going to be guards in the NFL. And it's still in a work in progress just because of the whole thing. So, like right now, my number 1 tackle is Will Campbell, but I mean, I may end up moving him to guard still because I understand and I see the issues with his length and stuff like that. So he may not even be the first tackle taken. After him, I have Kelvin Banks, who's another player who could move to guard. I still think you start him out at tackle and just see if he can do it, But my next best, true left tackle, I think, is Josh Simmons. But of course, he's coming off that ACL. But as long as it comes out healthy and he can, I don't know if he'll be working at the combine, but maybe it's pro day or something. But as long as his knee comes out good and he looks good and stuff, I think he might be the first tackle taken. I think he's the tackle with the most upside, really, for me. Then after him, I have Josh Connerly from Oregon. Another guy still needs some work. He needs to add some weight and some strength and stuff, but he's pretty much up there. He has a lot of talent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then my 5th one would be Cameron Williams from Texas, but I really think he needs to go back to school. He just has a lot of technical flaws, a lot of vision stuff he needs to work on. He just really needs another year. And after him would be Ersery.
Okay. So if I understood that right, and I'm paraphrasing, so you can reject my words if you need to, but you've got, you said Simmons, Connerly, Williams, Ersery?
Banks, then Simmons.
Well, right. Okay. And how do you compare, and I realize it's not the player that's up on the slide, but how do you compare Banks to Peter Skoronski? Like, who do you think, which of the 2 players do you think was a better prospect?
That's more of like it depends on what you're looking for, what you want. Because I think with Skoronski, when he was coming out, I saw him, he was going to be a guard for sure, no matter what. I didn't see any NFL team take him as a tackle or playing with tackle. I thought 100% this guy's a guard. And, he has short arms, all that type of stuff. He had the guard temperament. He played like a guard. He was physical, he was strong, all that type of stuff. He's a guy you would throw in there. He's going to be a 10-year starter. But with Banks, again, like I said, it depends on what you want. I mean, I think you start Banks off a tackle and see if he can prove that he can't do it. So I think that's the difference. I think Banks, I think he can do it. Where Skoronski, I was just like, he's a guard for sure. He's not gonna be a tackle.
If you had to compare Campbell to Skoronski, is it the same or would you say that you'd rather see Campbell fail outside before you put him inside?
I'd rather see him fail outside. And I think plus they're kind of different players a little bit. But as far as the play style and the physicality and the athleticism, all that stuff. But yeah, I'd rather let Campbell fail outside first.
Okay. And so the reason that I like to bring up Skoronski is that was an interior offensive lineman that was drafted really high.
Right.
Because I think Skoronski went top 15 and it wasn't very close to 15. Right. He was, I don't remember if he was a top 10, but I think he may have gone like 11th.
11, 12, something like that, I think it was.
Yeah. So for an interior offensive lineman to be drafted that high, do you think Banks and Campbell can go that high? As high as Skoronski did?
Like if the team drafting him sees him as an interior guy? I think Campbell will no matter what. I think if like 90% of NFL sees Banks as a guard, I don't see him going like top 10 or top 15, maybe top 20. And that's if like 90% of the NFL sees him as a guard, but I don't think they will. I think there'll be enough teams that'll see him as a tackle that he'll go high enough anyway.
Okay, cool. Well, on behalf of Brian and everybody at the Draft Professor, and for all of you watching on this Saturday morning, thank you. Hit that subscribe on YouTube. Hit the like on YouTube. Give at BMafia NFL a follow on X. Give at NFL Draft Fanatic a follow on X. On behalf of all 21 podcasters at the Draft Professor, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
See you guys tomorrow. It won't be me.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. Please follow the Draft Professor on YouTube, X, and Twitter at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. If you have a moment, try using some of the Draft Professor mock draft functionality, including a first-round challenge, a second-round challenge, rank players, and draft a team. Thank you very much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you on our daily draft podcast tomorrow.